I raised up in my household as a good Christian. Me
Who is this addressed to, please?
It's addressed to this gentleman right here.
Dr. White?
Dr. White. My mother, up to the day, she's still a good Christian. And I was raised in the church as a young man. And for some reason or another, while I was coming up, there was some kind of thing that came over me. One day I was reading, and I wanted to know what was the color of Jesus. Now, not to say anything.
Somebody assist him
positive.
with that mic.
I can handle it, sir. I can handle it. Right. I wanted to know what was the color of Jesus, because the reason why, because from the time I was a little boy and I raised up in the Virgin Islands, I always had a beautiful white Jesus in my house with long hair, beautiful and everything. And, okay.
That's the question, sir.
Okay.
All right.
I want to know, again, was Jesus, as you say, he's the Son of God, was the Son of God a black man or a white man?
The Son of God, Jesus Christ, was a Palestinian Jew, sir. And as far as what his color was, as I said, he was a Palestinian Jew, sir. I'm sorry you had a white Jesus, but the scriptures teach he was a Palestinian Jew.
That's right. Mr. Malik?
Greetings. I wanted to open this video with that clip you just saw, which was from the Q&A section of a video involving our brilliant friend, Dr. James White from Alpha and Omega Ministries. It was a debate that took place in 1999, and I wanted to open this video with that clip to show that Dr. White attempted to address the question of the outward appearance of the historical Jesus nearly a quarter century ago. And I wanted to do so because in this brief video, I want to ever so quickly cover a Twitter exchange from the past few days in which our friend Dr. White attempted to do so again. So on your screen is a tweet by Taylor Marshall, Dr. Taylor Marshall, who's a Catholic who's quite popular on social media. And Marshall posted the image that you see on your screen. It's an image of the Virgin Mary and Christ. And our brilliant Protestant brother James White retweeted it with text that first accused Catholics of turning Mary into an idol, and then, at the end of his tweet, he took issue with the depiction of Mary and Jesus, and he stated matter-of-factly that they didn't have light skin, light hair, and light eyes. Now, personally, I think the most intellectually honest position is to say that we don't know what the historical Mary or the historical Jesus look like. And I recently argued that in a Facebook thread from last August, which I'll link to in the video description. Now, first of all, let me just say up front that I'm fine with saying that a particular outward appearance seems unlikely or improbable, right? Because we could say that if we feel it does not fit what we feel might be the norm for the relevant region and time period. But in the interest of intellectual honesty, and I'm not trying to accuse Dr. White of intellectual dishonesty, so forgive me if I gave that impression, but nonetheless, in the interest of intellectual honesty, I would say that we should concede that whatever the typical appearance for a population might be, that does not preclude individuals within that population from diverging from such. Moreover, it now seems pretty clear to me that the genetic evidence shows that light skin, light hair, and light eyes was not impossible for persons in the region at that time. So it wasn't impossible for Palestinian Jews, first century Palestinian Jews. Now, admittedly, the genetic evidence shows that such appearances would only be found amongst a minority of persons in that time frame and region, but the point is nonetheless that that sort of appearance was not impossible. And for precisely that reason, I've playfully written on Facebook that someone like the Palestinian activist Ahed Tamimi would be within her rights to take issue with anyone who tried to tell her that her appearance is new to the region. But Taylor Marshall took a rather different approach, and it's one that I really appreciated. In fact, I love the approach that he took. He composed a tweet that declared, quote, Mary appears to Aztecs as Aztec. Mary appears to Japanese as Japanese. Mary appears to Europeans as Europeans. Just deal with it, end quote. Really quickly, one thing I would add to Marshall's tweet is that, when we take into account the various Black Madonnas, those sort of dark depictions of Mary, which are found all over Europe, it may also be the case that Mary appeared to certain Europeans as quite dark as well. Whatever the case, the point that Marshall was alluding to was likewise alluded to by me in that aforementioned Facebook thread from last August. However, in this video, I can attempt to unpack it more, as it's a thought that I personally find appealing and beautiful. Simply put, if we date the beginning of Mary's existence to her conception in her mother's womb, then she has existed for over 2,000 years, and much of that time transcends the few decades of her life experienced around the dawn of the Common Era, experienced, before and after the dawn of the first century. Catholics believe that Mary has appeared to various people since then, and the way that she's been said to appear in terms of like her outward appearance, the way she's been depicted and described has differed from one apparition to the next. Now, one might feel that that just means that the reports of apparitions contradict each other, but I would propose that there's nothing that logically precludes God from willing for Mary to present with different appearances in different time frames and locations. Now, James White responded to someone else who was making a similar point, and he waved it off as Gnosticism. But I would note that even in Mary's earthly life, in the decades immediately before and after the dawn of the first century, she went through profound morphological change. And again, if we start her earthly existence at her conception, then surely her skin tone while in the womb could have differed profoundly from her skin tone 10, 20, 30, or 40 years after her birth. The controversial phrase ontogeny recapitulates phylogeny has been much maligned in recent decades, but without digging too deep into that phrase and how it was intended, at the very least, if we're just limiting it to outward appearance, as far as outward appearance is concerned, surely we can agree that Mary looked very different in the first few weeks after her conception from the way she may have looked a few decades after her birth. And so if Mary can go through profound morphological change within just a few decades, in that period from her conception to her dormition, then it raises the question, what precludes morphological change from taking place in the roughly 2 millennia since her dormition? Food for thought. Now, our non-Catholic friends, including but not limited to our friend Dr. James White, are free to feel unconvinced, right? I respect that. I understand that. But with all due respect to our friends, an appeal to their own personal incredulity doesn't actually provide grounds for Catholics to reject this possibility. What has been touched on here seems quite plausible, at least within the context of Catholic thought and belief in the various apparitions and depictions of Mary throughout history. And with that, I'll close this video here by saying that I hope it was clear that no disrespect was intended towards our brilliant friend James White. As always, any comments, questions, or criticisms from anyone are welcome. So feel free to share your thoughts in the comment section, whether positive or negative. So to all, happy Lord's Day and God bless.